Imagine this. Just a few decades ago, China was considered a poor and struggling country. Millions of people lived in poverty. Its technology was far behind. Its economy was weak. And very few people believed China would become a global superpower. Meanwhile, America stood at the top of the world. The United States had the biggest economy, the strongest military, and some of the world's most powerful companies. But then something happened. Slowly, quietly, China began changing. Factories appeared everywhere. Cities grew at unbelievable speed. Technology exploded. And before the world realized it, China had become one of the most powerful nations on Earth. Now many people are asking a huge question. Is China becoming powerful enough to challenge America? And how did this happen so fast? Today, we're uncovering the incredible rise of China. Part 1. The China Nobody Remembers. When people think of China today, they imagine giant cities, advanced technology, and massive factories. But very few people remember what China looked like decades ago. Because the China we see today was almost unrecognizable back then. Imagine living in a country where most people worked on farms, where modern buildings were rare, where industries were small, and where millions struggled with poverty every single day. That was China during much of the 20th century. Back then, China wasn't seen as a future superpower. No one imagined China would one day compete with the world's strongest nations. At the same time, America was dominating nearly everything. American companies expanded across the world. Hollywood influenced global culture. American technology led innovation. And the US economy looked almost untouchable. If you asked someone back then which country would dominate the future, very few would have answered China. But history sometimes changes in ways nobody expects. And one decision would change everything. Part 2. The decision that changed everything. In 1978, China made a decision that would completely reshape its future. The government introduced major economic reforms. Instead of staying isolated from the world, China decided to open its doors. At first, few people realized how important this moment would become. But businesses noticed something immediately. China had a huge population, millions of workers, lower labor costs, and enormous potential. Foreign companies saw opportunity. Factories began appearing. Then industrial zones expanded. Then entire cities transformed. And suddenly something incredible started happening. Companies from all over the world started manufacturing products in China. Electronics, clothes, toys, machines, everything. And as more factories arrived, more jobs appeared. Millions of families experienced something new: economic opportunity. For the first time, many people saw a chance for a better life. But this was only the beginning. Because China wasn't planning to stop there. Not even close. Part 3. China becomes the factory of the world. At first, nobody thought this growth would become so massive. People assumed China would simply manufacture cheap products for the rest of the world. But what happened next shocked everyone. Year after year, factories continued spreading across the country. Small manufacturing areas became giant industrial cities. Production increased at a speed never seen before. Soon, products made in China started appearing everywhere. Look around your room for a moment. Your phone charger, your headphones, your shoes, your clothes, even everyday household items. There's a good chance many of them were made in China. And this wasn't happening in one country. This was happening across the entire planet. Slowly, China became deeply connected to global supply chains. Countries around the world depended on Chinese manufacturing, and the more products China produced, the more money entered the economy. But something even bigger was happening. Millions of people were leaving poverty. Families moved from villages into growing cities. New highways appeared. Modern train systems expanded. Huge skyscrapers transformed city skylines. Some cities changed so quickly that people could barely recognize them a few years later. The world watched this transformation with surprise. Economists began calling China's rise one of the greatest economic transformations in modern history. But China had another goal, because making products was powerful, but controlling technology was even more powerful. And that would become China's next mission. Part 4. China wanted more than factories. China understood something very important. Factories can create wealth, but technology creates influence. Technology creates power, and power changes the future. So China started investing enormous amounts of money into innovation. Artificial intelligence, robotics, electric vehicles, advanced manufacturing, space exploration, high-speed transportation. The country wasn't satisfied with simply building products designed by others. China wanted to create its own future. Universities expanded, research programs grew. Technology companies started receiving massive investments, and slowly the results began appearing. Chinese companies started becoming known across the world. People started seeing Chinese smartphones everywhere. Technology products improved rapidly. Electric vehicle companies expanded faster than expected. Suddenly, the conversation changed. Years ago, people often asked, "Can China manufacture products?" Now people were asking, "Can China lead future technology?" And the answer started becoming increasingly interesting. Because China was no longer just following trends, it was beginning to create them. But as China kept growing stronger, another country started paying very close attention: America. And concern started growing. Part 5. Why America started paying attention. For decades, America had occupied a unique position in the world. It had enormous military power, huge technology companies, strong international influence, and the largest economy for many years. But now another giant was rising. And this wasn't a small competitor. This was a country with over 1 billion people, massive industries, rapid technological development, and increasing global influence. Competition between the two countries slowly intensified. Economic competition increased. Technology competition increased. Political competition increased. And global influence became more important than ever. Many experts began describing this as one of the most important rivalries of the modern era. Because history shows something interesting. When a rising power grows quickly, and an existing power wants to remain dominant, competition becomes unavoidable. The world started realizing this wasn't only about economics anymore. Something much bigger was happening. Part 6. China's story still has challenges. But despite all of China's incredible success, the story isn't perfect, because every powerful country faces challenges. And China is no exception. Economic pressure still exists. Population growth has slowed. Some industries face uncertainty, and experts continue debating what China's future will look like. Some believe China could eventually become the world's largest economy. Others believe future obstacles may slow its rise. Right now, nobody knows exactly what will happen, but one thing is absolutely certain. The China of today is very different from the China of decades ago. A country that once struggled with poverty has transformed itself into one of the world's most powerful nations. And whether people admire it, fear it, or compete against it, the world can no longer ignore China, because its rise changed history. And perhaps, the biggest chapters have not even happened yet. For decades, many people believed the global balance of power would never change. America stood at the top, and very few imagined another nation could rise fast enough to challenge that position. But history has a strange way of surprising us, because sometimes the biggest changes happen quietly, slowly, step by step, and then suddenly, the entire world notices. China's rise wasn't something that happened overnight. It took decades of planning, economic changes, technology investments, and massive transformation. And today, the world is watching closely. Not because China has already replaced America, but because the future is becoming harder to predict. The real question may no longer be, can China rise? Because China already did. The bigger question now is, how far can China go? And more importantly, what will the world look like if the balance of global power changes once again? What do you think? Will China eventually surpass America? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe for more stories shaping our world.